We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus.
That was President Obama a year ago, speaking about the use of chemical weapons in Syria. And today, there are growing calls for the president to act after video reportedly out of Syria is said to show another chemical weapons attack that opposition groups say injured or killed at least 100 people, including children. The Assad government denies using chemical weapons, but it's refusing to let United Nations inspectors in to see for themselves, even though those inspectors are already in Syria investigating claims of earlier chemical attacks. Mark Mardell from the BBC writing in an editorial today, quote, President Obama clearly has a problem and will be accused of inaction and dithering. Senator John McCain says Mr. Obama blurred his own red lines earlier in the summer by not responding militarily to reports of attacks, and so encouraged this latest incident. His whole philosophy warns him against intervention in the Middle East. Domestic politics suggest Americans don't want to get involved. Getting embroiled would rather undermine his boast to be the president who brought the troops home. Meantime, the UN is reporting today the number of child refugees fleeing Syria's violence. It has topped the 1 million mark in another grim milestone of the deepening conflict. President Obama describing in an interview this morning what the U.S. is doing right now about the conflict in Syria.
We are right now gathering information about this particular event, but I can say that unlike some of the evidence that we were trying to get earlier that led to a UN investigator going into Syria, what we've seen indicates that this is clearly a big event of grave concern. And we are already in communications with the entire international community. We're moving through the UN to try to prompt better action from them. And we've called on the Syrian government to allow an investigation of the site because UN inspectors are on the ground right now.
And in nearby Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood and other groups taking to the streets in protest today, dubbed Friday of Martyrs, as ex-leader Hosni Mubarak is freed from jail. So a whole lot to discuss today. David Shanker, he's the director for the program on Arab politics at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and former Middle East advisor to Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Let's
start first with Syria. You heard the president speaking there. A big event of grave concern, very troublesome, requires America's attention. But yet a year ago, he said that if Syria crossed the red line, there would be action. We proved that there was the use of chemical weapons back then. There does not appear to have been any action. Do you think he will take some this time?
Well, I find it very hard to believe that he will. The fact that he referred this to the United Nations, a strategy that is typically a time-tested way to do nothing, really suggests to me that he doesn't want to do anything. The policy is focused around not getting involved. And so far, you've had 100,000 dead, mostly killed by bullets and missiles. It's hard to see how 1,000 or a couple hundred dead from a chemical weapon, while deplorable, would impact his calculus.
But on the other side of it, by arming the rebels, are we in essence arming al-Qaeda? How do we know who, in fact, we're arming?
Well, we have great intelligence. We have spent a huge amount of money on intelligence gathering. We have people in Turkey and in Jordan. We meet with rebel leaders. We say that we don't know who the good guys are, who the guys are in the Free Syria Army, the rebels that are not allied with al-Qaeda. But we actually do know who they are. And President Obama said some 2 months ago that he would arm the rebels, the vetted rebels. And yet just this week you had a rebel leader, secular, non-al-Qaeda leader, tell the LA Times that no weapons have arrived yet. If we don't know who the good guys are, it's because we don't want to know.
Definitely divided in his administration as to what to do, whether to arm the rebels, provide arms or not. Also a similar situation going on in Egypt, a decision that needs to be made. Do you think that we should end military aid in Egypt?
Absolutely not. If you look at the value of this assistance, it's $1.3 billion a year. The Egyptian military government, after toppling the Islamist president, Mohamed Morsi, received almost $16 billion from Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Kuwait. We don't have much leverage. It may make us feel good to cut this aid because of the coup, but in reality, we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot. We'd be cutting our relations with the military and giving us even less leverage than we have right now. It's good to maintain the open line of communication.
All right, David Shanker, thank you for your insight. We appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure.